Welcome back to Murphy's Family Kitchen. I'm Jim Murphy, and today I'm going to share with you another St. Patrick's Day tradition here in our house. And we're going to make a keto style shepherd's pie. So I have my ingredients out. I'm going to tell you what we're going to put in this thing, and then we're going to get started. There's quite a bit of chopping to do, so I'll take care of that shortly. But we're going to start out with a large head of cauliflower here, and this is in place of the mashed potatoes that typically go on top of a shepherd's pie. I'm going to make a cauliflower mash. We're going to put some cream cheese and butter in this to make it nice and creamy. It's going to make a beautiful topping for the shepherd's pie. I used 2 pounds of ground beef. I have 1 onion that I'm going to chop. I use baby carrots here, and I'm going to slice them up into thin slices, and about a cup of those. Same thing with celery, about a cup of celery. I don't use corn or peas when I make this. That would throw it outside of the realm of being keto. I have a teaspoon of thyme. I have 2 tablespoons of coconut flour, and that is in place of all-purpose flour. We have to have some kind of a binding agent and thickener inside of this, and so I use the coconut flour just to stay, again, inside of keto. And I have 2/3 of a cup of chicken bone broth that I use. So I'm going to get set up. I'm going to start slicing and cutting and dicing, and we'll be back shortly to get it all put together. So I got all my chopping done. I've got the carrots chopped up, the celery, the onions, everything is ready to go. I cut up the cauliflower into some large chunks, just small enough to all cook about the same time, but this way they'll all fit in the food processor when the time comes. So we're going to let that boil. When it is fork tender but not mushy, we're going to take it off, drain it, put it in the food processor. We're going to add to it our cream cheese and butter and get the cauliflower mash done, and then we'll start working on our meat mixture. All right, the cauliflower boiled, got to fork tender, and we're going to put it into the food processor here. Try not to make a mess. There's always a runaway. And almost there. All right. Pretty good. Not too bad. Not too bad. Only lost 1 piece. Okay. All right. We are going to add to this our butter and cream cheese. I have 2 ounces of cream cheese and 2 tablespoons of butter. And we're just going to dump this in here. And we're going to let the machine do its job of mixing it up. Look. Make sure everything's finding its way down to the blades. Got a couple of chunky pieces left in here, so we're going to run this again, but I want to get some salt and pepper in here, get it seasoned nicely. And you do this according to your own taste. And we'll let it smooth out again here for just a minute. That is nice and smooth. Looks really, really good. So we're going to leave this sit while we work on our meat mixture. All right, we're going to begin to heat up our skillet here. And while that's getting warm, you would normally use probably a tablespoon or so of olive oil in here if you prefer that. I'm going to use some bacon fat. If you've seen my how to make your own bacon video, you will see how easy it actually is. And I keep the bacon fat from that in this can, and I reuse it anytime we're cooking anything that calls for oil or butter. I will use this in its place quite often. Just gives everything an awesome flavor. You always hear somebody say, who doesn't like bacon when you use it like this? It's kind of hard to argue. And we are going to add into this our onions, carrots, garlic. I've got a teaspoon of minced garlic here, and this is just the kind of minced garlic you get in the jar from the store. I didn't mince it myself. And then we're going to put in our thyme. And we're going to let this just simmer for a little while and start to soften up these vegetables. Put a little salt in here. It'll help them sweat out a little bit. Some pepper, just for flavoring. And we're going to let this cook for a few minutes. So these are looking really good. They're starting to brown, and the onions are starting to become translucent. So we're going to add our meat in here. I have to tell you, the smell of the onion and the thyme really is just putting me in mind of Thanksgiving. I almost feel like I should be stuffing a turkey here. But that's a story for another day. In the meantime, we're going to get this started and get this beef going, get it all browned up. This will take probably 5 minutes, I would say, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. One thing I did forget to mention, very important as you go through this, is preheat your oven. I had already done that. I have it set at 400. It's ready to go, and once we have the shepherd's pie put together, we'll just go ahead and stick it in the oven. If you haven't seen my video yet on corned beef and cabbage, if you're interested in some other low-carb ideas for St. Patrick's Day, I have that video as well, and I will link that to this one so that you can take a look at that as well. And we will just let this brown up, and we will come back in just a few minutes. That meat is looking really good now. We got the red out, so to speak. And so we are going to add to this now the chopped up celery. And we'll stir that in. One thing to remember, if you are using a cast iron pan, please remember how hot it gets. I almost always forget and always seem to grab it, even though I keep a pot holder handy. It's just kind of automatic for me to reach for it, and it reminds you real quick that it means business. So just be careful with that. You do not have to use cast iron for this. You can use a casserole dish or any other oven-safe pan that you wish to use for this. So now that I have the celery stirred up in here, I'm going to take a look. If we had a bunch of excess fat from the meat, I would dump that off now. There's very little in here. I'm using a lean beef, and so I'm not going to dump that off. What I'm going to do now is just add in my flour. This is the coconut flour that we talked about. Just sprinkle that around evenly. We're going to stir it up. It'll get all dissolved in here. That becomes our thickening agent. That looks really nice. And then we're going to put our chicken broth in. And again, any type of chicken broth will work for this. I like to use a bone broth. It's heavier, a little bit, got a little more fat in it. It works well for low-carb keto diets, but certainly any type of chicken broth would do just fine here. And we're going to let this simmer for just a couple of short minutes here. I'm going to turn it down a little bit and give it a chance to thicken up. And once that gets thickened up a little bit, it'll be time for us to go back to the cauliflower mash and cover this up. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. There's very, very little liquid in this pan, so we're good to go. It's thickened up nicely. So we're going to take our cauliflower mash that we made, and we're going to begin to spread it across the top of the pan here. And we'll try and get it on here as evenly as we can. It's nice and creamy, so it's pretty easy to work with, and it doesn't want to really lift all the beef out. Sometimes with mashed potatoes, it wants to grab everything and kind of become a little bit of a challenge, but this is actually a little bit easier, I think. We're just going to spread that around as evenly as we can. Not really a work of art, but it looked really nice when we're through. All right, that looks really good. This baby is ready to go in the oven. So we have our oven, as I said, preheated to 400, and we are going to take this, put it in the oven on the center rack for about 20 minutes. We're going to check it in 20 minutes and see how it looks. Well, this has been in the oven now for 23 minutes. I checked it at 20 minutes. It wasn't quite finished yet. I added 3 minutes to the timer, and it's looking pretty good now. And really, the way you want to get this is to where there's no liquid coming up around the sides or on the top. And so it looks good and dry now, and we are good to go. Starting to get some brown on it. I hope you can see that okay. Right around the edges is starting to brown a little bit. Some of these peaks are getting brown. So traditionally what we would do here then is we would garnish this with a little bit of fresh parsley across the top. I don't have any fresh parsley to use, but I do have some parsley flakes. So just to give it a little bit of color, I'm going to see if I can get some on here without making a mess, just to give us an idea how it looks. And that just dresses it up a little bit. It doesn't do really anything for the flavor one way or the other. So we're going to let this rest for a few minutes. Everything that we cook needs to rest before we dig into it, and then we're going to see how we did. Okay, let's see how we did here. This really does look amazing. It's scooped right out of the pan. There's no liquid in the bottom of the pan. It is not dry. It's very moist. The vegetables, the carrots and the celery are cooked perfectly. They're nice and soft. The cauliflower mash on the top, it looks just like a traditional shepherd's pie with mashed potatoes. And we're going to give this a shot right here. That's amazing. This is one of my favorite dishes. I'm so glad that I can share this with you. And I hope you also check out my corned beef and cabbage. They're two of my favorite dishes for around the St. Patrick's Day. It's tradition in our house. I hope it can become a tradition in yours. I think everybody in the house will like it. And I promise if I didn't tell my son that we had cauliflower mash on this, he would eat it as if it were mashed potatoes and never know the difference. So I hope that you enjoy this. I want to thank you all for being here again. If you haven't checked out some of my other videos, please look at my channel. I've got some really nice videos out there for you. Try to follow the low carb keto as much as possible. And I think there's a lot of things out there that will be of help to you. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Give me a like on this, and we will look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thank you. Bye.